Hey, what's up? This is Antonio. Welcome back to my channel. And who's ready for some fighting words? In this video, I want to talk about the return of Errol Spence. Really quick, if you like the videos, please take the time to subscribe to the channel. And also, if you could, hit the thumbs up button. It does help, it does support, and show love to this channel. So, like I said, I want to talk about the return of Errol Spence. It looks like not only does Bud Crawford has his eyes on the winner of Fundora versus Tszyu, but it seems the big fish is back, and Errol Spence also has his eyes on the winner of Fundora and Tszyu. What are my thoughts on this? Well, first, I'm happy to see him back. You know, it's kind of funny because he has been silent for some time. And I was, like, not just the way he lost, but the way he lost, and then, you just factor in what's been happening the last few years of his life and, then the way he loses after this big buildup, and it was a one-sided beating. And then it's almost as if like, well, where do you go from here? I mean, you've been hearing you're the guy, and then, you get the beating that you get, and you realize you're not the guy. Then you don't necessarily want to exercise the rematch clause with Terrence Crawford, and I don't blame him. I mean, the reality is, what is he going to do different? I mean, there was no stage or point in the fight where he had a foothold, where he had an advantage, where he had gained momentum, steam, or that he was making any dent in the armor of Terrence Crawford. So his silence, to me was like, all right, are you planning on coming back? And actually, that's the route I was going to go when thinking about, his return to boxing or his boxing career moving forward. But this is good and bad news for me. So here's my thoughts on Errol Spence potentially taking on Fundora or Tszyu. So you lost the way you did. You took some time off, and I'm actually happy for the time that he took off. I do agree with the fact that he took time off, and he needed to take a substantial amount of time off. I don't disagree with that, not one bit. My issue is who he's coming back against. If, let's just say, if Fundora wins, well, then you're coming back against the guy who took out Tszyu. So, and Tszyu's on an absolute tear. So for him to take out Tszyu and saying something, about Fundora, fundamentally and savagely, because there's only one way that Tszyu and Fundora fight. And you got to keep in mind, yes, Errol Spence is big for the division of, 147, but this is his debut to 154. There's a difference. There is a difference. There's just a size difference. I mean, when you see these guys side by side and you notice the density, of bodies, there's a difference. When you see these guys on the actual scale, there's a difference. So it's going to be interesting to now, mind you, Errol can easily get up to. Errol could easily fight at 160. I mean, he's a pretty big guy. So it's not a thing of can he do it? It's more of a thing of maybe you should get your feet wet. That for me is the smart and safe way to go about things. I didn't have a big problem I don't have a problem with Crawford growing up to 154 because of the way Crawford last presented himself in the ring against Errol Spence. So I didn't have a problem with him going up to 54 because is it the biggest jump in the world? It's not the biggest jump in the world, but there is a difference. There is definitely a difference. But Errol, coming off of a huge loss, a substantial amount of time away from the ring, now he's going to have to learn a new trainer because him and Derek James have parted ways. So he's going to have to learn from a new trainer and learn the ways that individual is going to teach him. Fundamentally speaking, I really don't know what somebody's going to teach Errol Spence because fundamentally speaking, he does everything correct. Errol Spence is a very, very skilled basic boxer who just knows how to apply pressure and step on the gas. But he's a very, very, very skilled basic guy. He's not a flashy type of guy. He's just a really skilled, controlled, basic guy. So I don't really know what you teach a guy like that. I mean, or, what could be there to correct for an Errol Spence, for a new trainer. I don't know, but I will be making another video about that, and I'll touch more into that. But for this video, I've already said that I believe Tim Tszyu is going to win. I don't think it's going to be easy. I do think that Fundora is not Keith Thurman. You know, if you're going to train for Keith Thurman, you need to train for somebody who hits hard, but you also need to train for somebody who's not going to throw a ton of shots. You're also going to train for somebody who's going to be highly mobile and going to be moving around the ring a lot. You're also going to train for somebody who's very cautious as well. And then you get Fundora, who's a very tall guy in stature. So physically, he's different. Mentality-wise, he's different because he's not a Keith Thurman. Mentally speaking, he's not a Keith Thurman. He's not the type of guy where you hit him and he says that hurts, and then he takes off and he regroups. He's not that. Fundora's he's a lot different when it comes to his mindset. And if you hit him and he says that hurts, oh, he's going to throw one right back, right there in that sequence. And that's what separates him from a Keith Thurman mentally. They fight different. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. So, however, the upside for a Tim Tszyu is that you have a guy who's not going to run. You have a guy who's not going to move. You have a guy who's very easy to hit because he's such a big target. You have a guy who's, you know, we're going to live and die in this moment. That type of mentality. Well, Tim Tszyu's a headhunter anyway. I think either way, Errol Spence would have his hands full with either guy. Okay, if let's just say Fundora didn't get the fight with Tim Tszyu and he was stepping into 154 and he was taking on Fundora. I think Fundora would be more than a handful for an Errol Spence. Quite frankly, I think he'd be more than a handful. You know, I think he'd be more than a handful. But if he were to just take on a Tim Tszyu, I think Tim Tszyu is more than a handful. And quite frankly, I think Tim Tszyu is coming into his own and blossoming into his own quite beautifully, to be honest with you. So I don't see Errol Spence beating Tim Tszyu. And I think if he were to fight a Fundora, I think it would be a very hard, long, grueling fight. And I think if he were to win, and I do mean if he were to win, he would win it by mere points. And I do mean one or two when I say mere points. It would not be an easy task for him. Here's the thing when it comes to Errol Spence, because he's not coming back to a tune-up fight, we don't know how he's going to look. We don't know how he's going to perform. We don't know how he's going to take to shots. We don't know any of this stuff because he's been gone. He hasn't necessarily shown himself. He hasn't shown anything that he's been working on. We don't know a whole lot about what's been going on with him. So to say that he's going to come in and be the big fish all over again, I can't say that you're going to replicate what you did at 147 because I haven't seen you. And I haven't seen you perform at this, you know, on this level, at this weight class. And I can't say that. I can only say what you did at 147. That's what I can say. I just think both fights would be hard for him. Quite frankly, if I were in his corner, if I were in his management team or anything like that, or his new trainer, I would say, hey, you're coming back, you had a very long layoff, and you're really sore and bruised up, and you know it wouldn't hurt you to have a tune-up fight. It wouldn't hurt you to get your feet wet with somebody else. That's all I'm saying. You get your feet wet with somebody else, somebody not in the top 5, you know, maybe top 6, top 7. You can jump the line, top 6, top 7. If you finish that person, well, then we put you in with somebody in the top 5. But to say that you're just going to jump to the top, to the front of the line, and you're going to take on the guy, and Tim Tszyu is the guy right now. And I know a lot of people don't like hearing me say that, but Tim Tszyu is the guy right now. Whether you like it or not, he's the guy right now. If I'm Tim Tszyu, quite frankly, I can see how an Errol fight would be. I would entertain that. I would. And Tim Tszyu did mention this. He said, well, originally our plan was Errol Spence, then Terrence Crawford, and then Canelo. That was the plan. And because, you know, the way that Errol lost, obviously one gets chopped off and then it goes Terrence Crawford and Canelo Alvarez. But financially speaking, I think it does make sense to get Spence first, only because Spence is more popular than Terrence Crawford. Even after the loss, there's still a great intrigue in Errol Spence, especially since he's been gone, his hiatus. There's an even more intrigue, like, what's he going to look like? How's he going to fight? You know, who's he going to take on? Is he going to be, like, angry? Is he going to be, like, you know, this phoenix rising out of the ashes? What's it going to be like when he comes back? So there is a huge curiosity in regards to, in regards to Errol Spence coming back. And like I said, especially Errol draws a crowd. Tim Tszyu has been saying, he really wants to make a splash in America, and he's going to do that and everything. But you need the right names. And as much as Terrence Crawford is riding high right now, he doesn't move the needle the way that the name Errol Spence moves the needle. So, yeah, financially speaking, it would make a lot more sense if I'm Tim Tszyu. I would take on Errol Spence, and then I would move toward Terrence Crawford. That would make more sense. And I would listen. Jaime Munguia is going to do more than I don't think Jaime Munguia will beat Canelo, but I think he's going to do more than enough damage on Canelo. And let's just say you could get it in, your magic order. You would get Errol Spence, you would get Terrence Crawford, and then you would get Canelo. That could be a thing. It just really depends on how Earl's going to look, to be honest with you. And I'm going to say this, and it might be a little too early, too soon, but I'm going to say this. Depending on how Errol were to look with the winner of Fundora and Tim Tszyu, I think that would determine his longevity in the sport of boxing. If he does well, if he looks good, then yeah, he's probably going to stick around. Especially if if you were to take on the winner of that, you'd be going or fighting for a unified title. So obviously you would stick around. But if he doesn't look good, that's why I think the comeback fight is very important. It's a very integral thing for his career and his mindset. One thing I've always admired about Errol Spence is he's always called out the top guy, and he's always chased the top guy. He's always went after the guy who was considered the guy. And you got to give him credit for that. But considering everything that's happened to him after the last, 3-4 years, and then the way he lost the fight, and then the amount of time that he's been out of the ring, and then getting a new trainer, that's a lot of stuff to overcome. I'm sorry, that's a lot of stuff to overcome. Tim Tszyu and Fundora, I guarantee they both hit harder than Terrence Crawford. If Terrence Crawford did that to your face, what do you think Tim Tszyu's going to do to your face? Tim Tszyu's knocked out everybody who's been put before him in his last, 5 fights? And he's fighting better and better and better opposition every single time. What do you think he's going to do to your face? Fundora is no walk in the park. Like, people are almost sleeping on him and saying, I personally believe Tim Tszyu's going to beat him. But still, what do you think he's going to do to you? I think that comeback fight is very important. And I would personally say take on number 6 or number 7, get your feet wet. Once you got your feet wet, you shake it off the cobwebs, and you've gone through a training camp with your new trainer, by all means, yeah, take on the guy. And trust me, I'm more than sure that Tim Tszyu would wait for you after you shake off the cobwebs, because he wants the best Errol Spence. He can't get credit if you're the broken Errol Spence. He can't get credit if you're the car crash Errol Spence. He can't get credit if you're the Errol Spence that got beat up so badly by Terrence Crawford. No, he needs the best Errol Spence. So it makes sense for everybody. But those are my thoughts.